series. I am Shyamasundar Durisetti, co-founder UMO.Design and co-chair Content UXIndia conference. For this episode, I am honored to have Karel Vredenburg, our keynote speaker at the upcoming International Conference on Design, UXIndia 2021. It's great to meet you one-on-one, and honored to have you at our conference. I'm sure our audience at UXIndia, a part of UMO.Design, will be delighted to learn more from you. So let's start with the big shift. In the last 18 months, the world has seen accelerated transformation in all aspects of our life. Can you share your thoughts on the big shift and the role of design to start with?
Thanks for having me too, Shyam. Great to be talking to you today, as well as at the conference as well. Really excited about it. Yeah, the great shift is interesting. I mean, there's two big shifts. One is the big shift to design in general, which has been happening really, I think, over the last sort of 10 years. And the IBM company has been a major part of that, hiring some 3,000 designers. But in terms of over the course of the pandemic, it's also been really interesting to see how, especially designers who are pretty creative anyway, are adapting, to this new way of working from home, pivoting. The IBM company, because it's a very digital company anyway, transformed to working from home. Like about 95% of all employees went remote over the course of like a week or two, and designers have done that the same. And really taking things that used to be whiteboards and Sharpies and Post-it notes over to a digital equivalent and finding that, working really well. And I would also say that because we're really a global company, it turns out that the collaboration in some respects was even more effective using digital means, because everybody was now equivalent. The only real barriers were time zones. But we could now work equivalently with our colleagues, no matter where they are in the world, on a similar level to what we would be doing with people that would be close to us as well. So I think it's been an interesting transformation. The real challenge will be when we get into hybrid work, when we go back to our studios. Making that work effectively will be, I think, a big challenge.
Great. So what do you think as designers, right? So because of all this acceleration and all these changes around us, do you think it will have any influence on the design practice itself? And how do you see doing it at IBM in your role?
Yeah, I think it has, I think, in some of the ways that I just talked about, that it's, in some respects, the collaboration is even more effective. But there's also a certain degree of collaboration that happens when you're in person. And my own desire actually is to have our teams, no matter where they are in the world, get together in person, periodically, to really dig into that kind of work, to get together for a week, for example, and really ideate on new strategies and directions and the like. But I think the day-to-day work, I think, can largely be done in these ways. I think the other one that I've seen, Shyam, is this notion of focusing on trying to simulate being in person when you're remote. So things like ambient audio and video, leaving your video and audio on during like 2 or 3 hours during the day. So then you could do I remember you said you were going to watch that film, I had that kind of serendipitous conversation, even the similar kinds of things that come up with regard to the design work that you're working on, it's hard to schedule creativity, right? And if you have this kind of ambient video and audio that kind of simulates that we're actually together, that I think would be able to address some of the challenges of working remotely, even when we're back at the office, because we're working remotely with people in other parts of the world, like India.
Awesome. So Karel, we are seeing so many changes in almost every aspect of our life, right? So be it healthcare, be it work, be it the way we operate our lives, work-life balance, and all those things. So what do you think some of the interesting areas for us designers, if you want to dream big, what are some of the things that we can focus on going forward with this big shift?
What I think is interesting regarding this great shift is that everything is now needing to be digital, right? So companies like ours that work on trying to digitize work really, I think, are helping many organizations to really go down that path. And what's interesting about that is that, design in many ways has historically been kind of focused on the craft of design. It started with industrial design, and a lot of design, even with UX practitioners, still is creating the actual artifacts. And I think one of the things that this whole experience over the last almost 2 years now is a real focus too on kind of the service design aspects, really looking at a whole process that you need to be supporting. Because now when you're doing it digitally, you need to go do all of it. You need to deal with how does somebody actually become aware of whatever it is that you're talking about. I teach in a business school and a medical school, and we get the students to work through particular scenarios. They might be redesigning, let's say, a health clinic, but even thinking about that, doing that now digitally, it really helps you now to think about, even when we're going to be going back and physically going to clinics, you still are thinking through now the steps that we were forced to think through when we had to do it all digitally. So I just think that we probably have a greater appreciation of the importance of service design and needing to combine service design with, the craft of UX design and designing of products themselves.
Yeah. So that brings me to the next question, which is like, I know that you have been doing a lot, and then you're in some sorts a huge pioneer of sorts in so many areas of design, and then you yourself have been an educator of design as well, right? So you teach design in so many ways and all that stuff. So with all these things that we just discussed in terms of how practices would need to transform, and then opportunities that we need to go after as designers. So what does it mean for design education? So do you think is there a gap that we need to catch up with from education side, or any thoughts on that side?
Yeah, I think there really is, and we started. Don Norman and I started an initiative called the Future of Design Education that actually is focused on this very topic. But it's things like the things that we were just talking about, really making sure that the typical design education of teaching somebody to create a thing, whether that thing is a physical thing or a digital thing, that is still important, but we need to go beyond that, right? We need to go beyond that in so many different ways, and really looking at the bigger picture. So I mentioned service design and also other aspects of it. And one of the things that I'm going to be talking about in my talk is the focus on embracing cultures around the globe. We've had a focus on various aspects of diversity and inclusion. We've focused on gender diversity. We've focused on racial diversity. I think we need to focus heavily on cultural diversity as well. So places like India, having a long, proud history of design, really incorporating that more centrally in what it is that we're doing. And also, I think, generating the appropriate interest in design. So not only making sure that design education satisfies the needs that we need in the world, and I don't mean just commercial companies, I mean organizations need, broad thinking designers. But it's also the case that we need to inspire the right kinds of students to get into design, and it's often the case, like our experience in North America, looking at racial equity. We put a TV show together called America by Design, that actually we had a segment in it talking about what our company is doing with regard to racial equity in design, and really trying to inspire that young person and their parents and their grandparents to think about design as being a relevant thing for them. And I think that's the same kind of challenge that we've got, in India, as far as I understand, that a real focus on business and technology, but not as great a focus on the importance of design. That design is a discipline and a profession that makes sense to pursue. I think we need to inspire, a whole generation of younger students to get into this field, because there's a huge demand, for designers. But we need to make sure that we're actually making sure that they will think that design is relevant, and then make sure that design education is relevant. And the other aspect that I would throw out as well is that the community of designers as well is really supportive of designers, and that's really this notion that continuous learning is really what we should be embracing. So it isn't the case that you just go to school and that's it. You learn what you need to learn from a design point of view. No, you need to be working with other colleagues. You need to further developing your skills and and really collaborating with a community. And so one of the things that I'm working on with our studios in India, we have several of them, is to also start to build even more of a community of designers there, and then working together with UXIndia, as well, with regard to all of the elements of the programs that you have that I'm so impressed with, quite frankly. I want to start doing some more collaborative work with you as well.
That's really great. I think what struck me the most is taking design to the larger audience out there through TV as a medium. I think that's really inspiring. I would like to know more about that. Maybe it's a topic for a different day, but yeah, that's really
right.
That's really intriguing there. So the other question that I had from, this is coming mainly from the audience, let's say, right? It's because folks are watching this, I think they'll be interested in getting a sneak peek into your topic at the conference. So can you give us a high level overview of what exactly you're going to talk about at the conference?
Yeah, I will. My sense is that, design has, at least commercial design, has been historically influenced by Europe and then sort of North America. I'll talk about my experience working in China and seeing that while that influence from made in California, assembled in China for all of the Apple products, for example, right? That I saw that the direct influence of sort of North American European design injected into the culture there, while at the same time there's this wealth of aesthetics, and values that wasn't incorporated into those designs that I think could be. And same thing with India. So I traveled around India and really was thinking too that while we're further developing sort of the design capability in India, I would love to have more of the history and the culture of Indian design, incorporated into our design aesthetic across the globe as well, so that we don't just rely on that. And also even the values and the culture can inform, I think, an entirely different focus. Like one of the things that we've observed in terms of kind of colonized design, if you will, is also very hierarchical. Everything is hierarchical, and there's a it's not as collaborative as it could be, for example, is one element of it. I also looked at other influences like indigenous practices of 7 habits or 7 uses rather of products, thinking about the sustainability and the environmental impact of what it is that we're doing. There's so much that we can learn, I think, from really developing and encouraging and embracing local cultures as well. And I think India's got a lot of that. So my focus will be on how do we really build up and it's really aligned with the mission and the interests and the work that UXIndia as an organization has been doing as well. Really trying to further strengthen the interest in design, like I mentioned before, focusing on making sure that people that have an aptitude for design would actually go into design and would be encouraged to do so by their parents. That we then have an education system that doesn't just teach industrial design or craft design, but teaches a broader perspective on design and designing for the world, designing for the environment, that kind of thing, and then having a culture and a community of designers within the country, connected to the rest of the world as well, so that we can collectively raise up the practice of design globally as well as locally. That's the kind of things that I'm going to be talking about.
Great. So any final thoughts on UX India and the experience that you had so far in terms of coordinating the event, and then how the onboarding experience has been, and then any final words?
Yeah, I love being asked to do the talk. I love learning more about the organization, quite frankly, and preparing for this. And I've always had, I mean, I'm an immigrant myself, so I didn't start off speaking English, for example. I actually have a real appreciation for differences and cultural differences and language differences around the globe. So I've always been fascinated by this topic. And the time that I've spent in India that I mentioned earlier, I just got this incredible desire to get more in depth, and even the preparation for this talk has been a learning experience in that regard, as well. So I not only look forward to putting this session together, but also the follow-up with UXIndia as the organization as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Karel, for sparing your time and more importantly, sharing your thoughts with our community. We look forward to your talk at UXIndia 2021. Thank you.
I very much look forward to it. Thanks so much.